Hello, welcome to Sinner Saint Sister. This is a space where searching, hurting, faithful, curious people come together and ask hard questions and listen to wise guests share how they have lived life deeply. There are a couple of things that you can do that really help out the show. One of them is if this episode is something that blesses you, can you please send it to a friend? Another thing is that if you really liked it, then could you please leave a 5-star review and write something nice? You can follow along at YouTube/Allison Sullivan for some really fun extras. Find me on Instagram at Allison M. Sully and TikTok at Sullivan Family TikTok. Thanks for being here. I hope you hear something today that lets you know you are loved and helps you love one another. Welcome to Sinner Saint Sister. It's not every day that you get an invitation to Patricia Heaton's house in Nashville. But when you're friends with Destiny Herndon de la Rosa and share a conviction that feminism demands equality, appeals for peace, and speaks out against violence, you might just find yourself knee to knee and elbows linked with 30 pro-life activists in the glossy estate of America's mom. It was a weird weekend. It was weird enough knocking at the door of a TV icon because my purple-haired friend suggested I contribute to a retreat she organized for pro-life women to put their heads and hearts together. I just hoped I wasn't being punked. Can you imagine? There I was in Nashville with my brimmed hat at the door of a shiny white mansion while Destiny chuckled behind some hidden camera. All perfectly on brand for her, by the way. But if I felt weird outside, inside was altogether otherworldly. I arrived first. Awkwardly, I immediately asked to use the restroom as a tactic for more time. Time to collect my thoughts, remember how to speak, wait for other people to arrive. I shut the door with no need to actually use the restroom and looked in the mirror, taking stock of who I was amidst the many marbled examples of who I wasn't. And instantly, I felt silly about my hat. I waited and prayed. And then I ran the water to make my charade more convincing, as one does in a fake bathroom situation. Listening for clues. Am I the only one who spends a good chunk of time hiding in bathrooms at parties? I heard the sound of the doorbell and the high-pitched greetings of other uneasy travelers. Their nervousness, our shared experience. It settled my soul. I've discovered in my maturity that I'm not after an uncomplicated existence. Life is hard, after all. It's more that I'm not willing to go it alone. Complicated? Okay. Together? No problem. The skittish hellos and amateurish oohs and ahs as guests admired a gorgeous home. Even the delicate shyness of our acclaimed high-profiled host. It all echoed in the foyer. That people? We were just people, doing people things. And with that, I unlocked the door, straightened my hat, and shook some hands. Now, people aren't brands, and brands aren't people. No one fits neatly. I understand that. After all, there's nothing tidy about the ways I have had to marry my political ideas with the seriousness and fervor they deserve. And live out my faith adherent to the moral convictions I've accumulated over the years, trying my best to mimic the generosity of a savior. I am quite a mishmash of ideas, theory, dogma, and good intentions in a banged-up world full of chaos. I am still so hopeful for thy kingdom come. I thought meshing my edgy feminism with my Christian ethics would take some creativity because, as you might guess, suggesting a smashing of the patriarchy, well, it raises a few eyebrows in conservative Christian spaces run largely by men. It's only in secular spaces that I've been able to rail against the world being set up in a way where the needs of women are largely overlooked. And conversely, it's only in stained-glassed sanctuaries with believing, similarly convicted sisters that I can lean into the fundamental moral obligation to respect the dignity of every person as a child of God because we are people of life and for life. So, when I met Destiny Herndon de la Rosa and learned about the secular work of New Life feminists, and then convened with her friends in a star's living room hoping to bring new life to the pro-life movement, my worlds collided in ways I didn't even know to hope for. One by one, each woman stood up tall and introduced herself to the room. With passion, she described her work. With appetite, she described her hope. With humility, she looked around to each one of us and said what an honor it was to grow together, to lean on one another. Imago Dei, It says that I have a moral obligation to defend human life from conception until natural death, one said. Pregnancy, it's not a disease, but injustice sure is, she said. Pregnant women are continually made to feel like an inconvenience, one railed. So I fight for equality, she explained. Equality on our own terms, without sacrificing our femininity, without becoming a uterusless man in order to be respected. You know how many billions are owed worldwide in unpaid child support, she asked. Abortion just enables men to disrespect and objectify women, she continued. Yeah, politics, they're a dumpster fire, she scoffed. But I'm called to be political and ask why. Why are people poor? Why do women feel forced to abortion? The oppressed should never become the oppressor, she said, with utmost conviction. It is because of the gospel's invitation to be a peacemaker that I will defend life whenever, wherever it is threatened or diminished, she explained slowly, with a pointer finger held high in the air, lest she be misunderstood or not taken seriously, ready to take on the world. Owl-eyed, I watched. Amazed, I listened. One by one woman after another stood up and spoke my heart. I wrote as quickly as I could. At one point, I shut my eyes and just prayed. I wasn't even sure what for. I only knew that it was a holy moment, and so I did what I always do when I feel overwhelmed. I closed my eyes and I asked for nearness. It was in the southwest corner of Patricia Eaton's living room that a vision came to me. I shy away from over-spiritualizing things because I would be voted most likely to flip someone off for going slow in the fast lane. But with crystalline clarity, I saw a redwood tree as I was praying. I didn't try to attach any meaning to it. I just smiled, thinking of the strength that I associated with such a sight, and then the strength that I saw in these women. Another woman, another tree, another smile. My vision was interrupted by a storm blowing in. It started simply and predictably enough, but escalated quickly after I, air quote, saw the forest of redwood trees. Surrounded by windows and the wind strong enough to hear from the inside, I opened my eyes and I looked around to see if anyone else was concerned. Then quietly, I asked my neighbor if she thought that wind sounded a little train-like. We broke for lunch after the storm passed, energized by the excitement of like minds, open hearts, and connected souls, and probably an eventful storm too. It was hard to separate us. Chatter bounced around the marbled foyer as we mapped our destinations to lunch. Sure enough, driving through the gated neighborhood, downed trees blocked the roads. Not just limbs, but whole trees. Giant, mature trees looked like they had been easily plucked from the ground and just gently laid on their sides. I'd never seen anything like it. Our retreat continued, and the initial certainty of the power in that room, it felt otherworldly. It's the only word I have. Except now, with time and shared meals, the visions and dreams united us, and the power, it felt exponential. We weren't standing alone. We were standing together. And as we were saying our goodbyes, I snuck off to go get a picture of the closest downed tree. If I hide in bathroom for introductions, I dash across the street for goodbyes. And it was only when I snapped a picture of a tree the size of a building peacefully toppled that I remembered how clearly I saw a redwood forest. Curious for the first time about the potential significance, I Googled redwood forest, and I read this. These trees, they have horizontal root systems that extend over 100 feet from the base. They intertwine with the other roots of redwood trees, and this increases their stability during strong winds and floods. Fascinated, I read more. Resistant to insects, able to withstand fires and floods, subject to no diseases, they endure for ages with no natural enemies. But man, amazing. But what I couldn't get over was their massive size with no vertical root. How in the world were they able to live so long and grow so tall without toppling? How have they survived earthquakes, landslides, floods, strong winds, and other trees falling against them? Redwoods, they thrive in thick groves where the roots can intertwine and even fuse together. What their root system might lack vertically, it makes up for in its width. And this gives them the strength against the forces of nature. High winds, bring it. Shifting ground, post up. Rising waters, say it again. Pests, F around and find out. With roots intertwined, we hold one another up. Quick tears sprang to my eyes. I asked for nearness and was given a grove of redwoods. Our lives, they're not bullet pointed. They're multi-volume sets. And every now and then you have a moment that makes you about face, look behind you and say that every single thing has added up to this. Bone by bone, muscle by muscle, hair by hair, night dreams, daydreams, moments hardly understood, events barely remembered. Every single thing makes sense now that I am standing right here taking a picture of a toppled tree. For me, solidarity includes a scriptural call to promote peace and pursue justice in a broken world marred by violence. For me, solidarity includes a consistent ethic of life. For me, solidarity includes a society where women don't feel like they have to betray their motherhood while men live disconnected from their fatherhood. I never even hoped for a room full of like minds, open hearts, and connected souls. I've always felt like such a lone ranger with my mishmash, but here we are, all tangled up, and I am more hopeful than ever before for thy kingdom come. This episode's guest is Amy Ford, co-founder and president of Embrace Grace, and you are going to hang on her every word. Hello, Amy Ford. I am so excited to have you on the show today. Amy Ford is a wife, a mom, an author, a national speaker, and the co-founder and president of Embrace Grace. And altogether, just someone who is preaching and teaching and living a pro-love, pro-life life. And I have wanted to know you more for a really long time. We've been in a really important same circle that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about. But it's a delight to have you, Amy. Welcome to Center Saint Sister.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So we know each other from The Feminist, and I feel like one of Destiny's for certain talents is drawing people together. And she just has the most wonderful friends and co-laborers. And it's been a delight for me to get to know all of you. I had an opportunity to go to Nashville last year where you were as well. And there was something about our walls down, dreaming together camaraderie that developed a true sisterhood. And I hope that that's a circle that I can stay in for a really, really long time. It was really, really wonderful to brainstorm with you and hear from you and daydream about what's possible for the pro-life movement.
Yes, dreaming is my favorite. And I think there's something about women coming together and linking arms and seeing how we can make an impact together. We're stronger together. And even, I know we just had another one here a couple weeks ago and there were tears, there was laughter. And then we felt by the end of it, we're just like, okay, let's do this. It just
right.
fills your cup being
Yes.
together.
It's missional. There's no competition. There's no scarcity mindset. We're all just rooting for each other, interconnected. And it's a lovely thing to model and then put out to the world to be like, this can be done. So before we get started with all of the things that you're wonderful at, I would love for you to introduce yourself personally by telling us a little bit about who and what you love.
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Amy Ford, and I have been married 25 years, and I have 4 kids plus a daughter-in-law. And I just found out I am about to be a grandma. I am so excited.
Yay!
I'm going to be called Honey. Honey
yes, you are.
My grandma name. And I just, I'm so excited. Well, I'm sure we'll get into my story here in a minute, but my son and his wife that are expecting, they got married in 2020, and he was my unplanned pregnancy, and that I almost had an abortion. And so to see now, the impact he's made, and now another generation is coming. I'm just so thankful. They're amazing.
Oh, how wonderful. So congratulations. So one of the things that drew us together in the Feminist, and I'm sure that Destiny will come up more than once, but is this idea of feminism. And so I know that you call yourself a feminist. I call myself a feminist. We also call ourselves Christians, and we are also pro-life. And the world might say that those things might not go together very neatly. And I don't know about you, how you would talk about this, but I would love to throw this your direction. But I don't really fit a lot of those terms neatly, or at least what the world has done with the terms. And so is existing in all of these spaces simultaneously ever difficult for you? Do you mind talking to us before we really get started into your work about this intersection?
Well, I think that the existing part, I think it can be hard because people do pigeonhole, certain words
Mm-hmm.
and even the word pro-life or feminist. And I always say I am a feminist, but I also love men, especially my husband and my sons. And I do not want to fix my car or kill a bug. And so you could call me a bad feminist. I don't know. But I also believe in women power and that women are strong and together we can make a difference. But I think the world has said for so long that you have to sacrifice your child in order to achieve your dreams. And whenever celebrity, heard celebrities accept their awards and they say something about being thankful for the option to choose. And I'm standing here accepting this because I had that option. And I just feel like that paints a picture of us being weak as women. Like we can have our baby and our dreams too. And it's not to say it's going to be easy because it's not. It is not easy, but we are strong and we can do it. And even if it takes a little longer or whatever that might look like, we can have both. And I feel like that is the true feminism. It's like the women empowerment, that you are strong and that just even realizing how our bodies are such a miracle. But it definitely is hard because sometimes certain words can be, they have a mindset around that word. But really, if you look at even the beginning of the first set of feminists, when we got to vote and all of that, they were all more on the life side. It's just over time, it started skewing as to what true feminism is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting if someone from the outside of Christianity, instead of seeing that this is about modeling our lives after Jesus Christ and loving our neighbor as ourselves, they might see hate first. Or even feminism, it might be portrayed as something man-hating, like you said, or shrill, or violent, or I don't know, cause of the breakdown of the family, or pro-life as something that is controlling instead of empowering.
Against something.
Exactly.
When really we're for life.
Exactly. And so there are a lot of things that people can do that might look more allegiant to the cause instead of what's actually at the center of all of these things, which is dignity, right? Like at the center of Christianity is dignity, feminism, dignity, pro-life dignity. And so, yes, there are things that are embarrassing or counter to the cause, but we can reclaim those things. And I know that you have made it your life's work to do just that. Will you please tell us, and we'll get into your personal story after that, if that's okay, but will you tell us what Embrace Grace does, and then we'll talk about why?
Yes.
But yes, tell us all about Embrace Grace.
So we are a nonprofit that has curriculum for women with unexpected pregnancies in churches all over the nation. So for the longest time, when a girl gets pregnant, the church is not something that automatically crosses her mind as a place to go to for support, wisdom, prayer, guidance, anything. In fact, you kind of want to run away from it. There's shame around it. And there's a lot of wounds there too, with past experiences that maybe people have heard about, other women that have gone to the church for help. And so we want to change that. We want the church to be one of the first places the girl runs to instead of the last, because of shame and guilt. And so we have curriculum and training for churches to have their own support groups, and then their local pregnancy centers refer the moms that just find out they're pregnant to the church for these support groups. But what happens in them, we share the gospel, and it's also just all about their identity and their value and their worth and how loved they are. And then just the organic help that happens, because the church has all of the and the church, I don't mean the building. the church is us, me and you, and we have all the gifts and the strengths and the talents that God put inside of us, not so that we have a better job and make more money or whatever, but it's to do the good work that God's called us to do. And so how can we use those strengths in order to make abortion unthinkable for women? And so we are not political in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we use the word pro-love a lot because we believe that pro-life is a stance, it's the belief system, but pro-love is the action, and it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. And so getting these girls plugged into the church and then having the church walk alongside her, it's cool to see the organic help that happens. I mean, we've seen moms get cars. We've seen moms, have childcare offered to them. We've seen moms, looking for a job. And so someone's great at HR and they're helping her with her resume. I mean, with all of us, we can help her. And so that is what we are trying to do. So we have over 1,100 groups around the nation in all 50 states. And so moms with unexpected pregnancies can get plugged into the support groups, and they get a baby shower is a big part of the experience, where they get all of the items that they need: car seats, swing, diaper bags, diapers, like so much, all brand new, that they get blessed with when going through an Embrace Grace support group. And they meet other girls going through the same similar situations. They make new friends, and they have a great a support network that's beautiful.
So, so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for your yes and obeying these holy nudges that have led you to this really important place at this really important time. I want to be the type of parent, what you're saying, really resonates in my mama heart, because I want to be the type of parent I'm raising. They just, how there's that, there's this little graceful period after toddler and before teenager that it's like, you know what, like, I'm sleeping great. Like this is okay. Well, I have now entered into teenager, and I thought that I've said this a couple of times on the show, so I'm sorry for people that are hearing this for the millionth time, but I thought that when people said it was going to be hard, I thought they meant hard in a sitcom kind of way. Like this will tidy up in 30 minutes. It's going to be cute hard. Well, it turns out it's just actually hard. And so we've had to really, my husband and I, go back to the basics of like, what is important to us? What do we value? What are our goals here? And one of the things that has come up is that I want to be the type of mom that when something goes wrong, because it will, that my kids, instead of saying, oh my gosh, my mom's going to kill me, don't tell my mom. It's, oh my gosh, I have to find my mom. My mom's going to help me. And so, creating a culture, creating a family culture where that's the first thought instead of, I can't share this. This isn't acceptable in this place. So that you have done that on this larger scale is just really, really beautiful to behold. I know that this work is personal for you, Amy. Do you mind sharing your story? Is it a good day for that?
Yes. Well, I had an unplanned pregnancy when I was 19, and I grew up in a Christian home, went to a private school, I knew abortion was wrong. But going back to what you were just saying, I definitely had the mentality of my parents are going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell them this, and which led to fear-based decisions, because you're not sure what to do. And I was so scared to tell them. I thought, I could just have an abortion and I'll deal with the consequences of a broken heart later, but I don't see how I can do this. And I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. I went to church every single week because my parents made me, but I didn't have a relationship. So when I went me and the father of the baby, we scheduled it. We went, we paid for it. And when I was in the abortion room, as they were explaining to me how they were going to do it, I ended up hyperventilating and passing out in the abortion room. And when I came to, one of the nurses was feigning me. She was trying to give me a drink of water. And she said, you're too emotionally distraught to make this decision today. You can come back on another day, but today you're not getting an abortion. And so I went back out into the waiting room and I told the father of the baby, we're still pregnant. And so we just decided in that moment, like, okay, if we're going to be homeless, if we're, the enemy lies to you and tells you like all of these worst case scenarios, like we're going to be homeless, our dreams are over, our life is over, our parents are going to like totally kick us out, all this stuff. And so we went and told our parents, okay, we're still pregnant or we are pregnant. And they were definitely disappointed in the timing, but it wasn't as bad as we had thought it would be. We had me and my husband, we actually decided to get married. When I was 16 weeks pregnant, we were high school sweethearts. We knew we wanted to get married someday, just not necessarily in the order that it ended up happening. So we asked this pastor that had led my husband to the Lord years before if he would marry us. And he said, "No, I'm sorry, because you've sinned, I will not bless this marriage." And we were like, wow, like we are such horrible people. We can't even be blessed, and have someone marry us. And so we found someone else that would marry us, but it definitely felt like a scarlet letter experience, on our wedding day. Just what do people know? What are they saying? And just, it wasn't fun. And so after that, we tried to go back to church, but it was like the elephant in the room, and people don't know whether to say congratulations or I'm sorry. So then they don't say anything. And then you feel alone in a crowd of people. And I'm pretty extrovert, like as far as being around people. And so it's very obvious when all of a sudden all these people that would talk to me are not talking to me now. And again, I don't think it's that they didn't like me. They just didn't know what to say, to how do I handle this? So we just really stopped going for a while. And I had a son, Jess, and he is 25. He's the one they just found out they're expecting. Him and his wife got married a couple of years ago. He went to Oral Roberts University and he got a theology degree and he got his MBA, and he works in the pro-life movement as well. He actually owns a Ford creative company, but his main clients are all pro-life clients, which I love. And so like to see the impact that he's making, like it's just crazy to think that he almost wasn't here. But when he was 2, that pastor that wouldn't marry us, he actually called my husband out of the blue and he asked for forgiveness. He said he felt like it was his worst mistake in pastoring history that he had ever made. And my husband was like, "Yes, I forgive you. I've missed you. Love you so much." And then when my son Jess was 16, that pastor asked me to come speak at his church. So he had moved since then. We live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He moved to Austin, which is like 4 hours away. And so he had asked me to come speak at his church. And he was very open with his congregation before I had gotten there about what he had done years before. He said, "I had a religious spirit. I had a Pharisee heart. This is what I did. But now this is her ministry, Embrace Grace, and we want to bring it here." And so I came, I spoke, I did my thing. And then afterwards, he asked me to come back on the platform. And this is in front of the entire congregation. And he also asked my son, Jess, to come on the platform. And Jess was 16. And he said, "Amy, years ago, I asked your husband for forgiveness, but I never really asked you. Will you forgive me for what I did 16 years ago?" I was like, "Yes, of course. I forgave you such a long time ago. You're amazing, all this." Well, then he looked at my son, 16, in front of the whole church. And he said, "Will you forgive me for planting seeds of rejection in your heart before you were ever even born? And while you were in your mother's womb, I rejected you." And my son, 16, in front of the whole church says, "I forgive you." And it was such a powerful moment in that room. The fact that the pastor would humble himself in that way, like you could feel church wounds being lifted off of the congregation by him doing that. And it was even a healing moment for Jess because 3 years before my first book came out. And so I hadn't told him, the story, and I was about to be on some shows and things. I was like, "I'm going to need to take you, we actually took him to the Cheesecake Factory, which I have 4 kids. So it's weird to take one, he knew something was up, and me and my husband. And so we're like, we need to tell you, this is your story of how you came into the world. And I had my friends praying because I didn't want him to take it as rejection. I was like, I was just a dumb kid and I didn't know. And I know that I didn't plan you, but God planned you, and you were just what we needed. And so, he was 8th grade boy. I said, "So how does this make you feel? Like, what are you feeling right now?" And, you could probably guess what he says. He's just like, he doesn't know how I felt. But over time, he did kind of the enemy started lying to him and saying, "You weren't even supposed to be here. Your parents didn't even want you." He knew good and well we loved him, but Satan used that to just torment him. And so we didn't know. For 6 months, he was really struggling. And one day at our church, they had asked a couple of the youth to speak for 5 minutes on how they're an overcomer. And so he came into my room and he's like, Mom, I think I just have had like a revelation. And he said, this is what I'm going to say. He said, in a nutshell, he said, I was an overcomer before I was ever even born, and that Satan had a plan to take me out, but I'm here and I want to use my story to help people and to do what I can and talk about identity and value. And I'm like, that is amazing. And now, like, I think we're going in 2 weeks together to speak in New York. We're speaking at an event together. Like, we get to travel sometimes we get hired to do them together, which is the sweetest thing ever. And it's just crazy to see God's redemption and how it's just awesome. So that all led to starting Embrace Grace. And because really going back to think, okay, I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, but I did go to church every single week. And back then we didn't have Google. We just had a phone book, and if anyone's young that's listening, they're just these big, giant yellow books.
What are yellow pages? Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of had to like just by alphabetical order, find what you're looking for. But we went straight to the abortion clinic. But why did I not think, like, why didn't I go to the church? Why didn't I ask them for guidance and wisdom and prayer and counsel in that decision? But it was the last place I wanted to go to. So how can we change that? And that really fueled Embrace Grace starting, because we believe the church does have power, and the abortion rate is exactly the same inside the church as it is outside. There's no difference. So there are women in our pews that have had abortions, that may be about to have one. And what can we do as a church? And I think churches don't like to talk about it because they think it's political, when really this is just about helping people. This is about bringing awareness to hard situations that they need guidance on what to do. And if they don't think it's a subject they can talk about, they're not going to be inclined to reach out and ask for support. So we are working on changing that, one church at a time.
There are so many tangents that story could take. We could talk about mercy. We could talk about redemption. We could talk about forgiveness. One of the things that's important to me, it's a fluke and we are grateful, but we have a very large platform on TikTok. And what has happened is that people who are outside of the church have found their way over to Instagram, which was more my work, which is more ministry related. And so they will find something charming on one platform and they will follow to another and realize, I don't think with a whole lot of surprise. I mean, we say shucks over here and stuff. I don't think anyone's like, baffled that we are a Christ following family. However, one of the things that has been really important to me is introducing them to Christians that are searcher friendly, because I think a lot of times what can happen is that as a church going person with regularity, we want to make people on the inside feel comfortable, and we want to make people on the outside feel uncomfortable. And it should 100% be the opposite, where we want to make people on the outside feel comfortable, and people on the inside, those are the people that we want to challenge. And so what I love about what you're doing is you are challenging the people inside that building and the larger Big C to say, you know what, it is really easy to cast a vote, and it is a lot harder to involve yourself in the messy life of someone who is desperate. And then you're sending the message, most importantly, is this is truly a hospital for the sick. Come here, be healed. That is what Jesus is all about. And so inviting people on this show that are sending that message is of paramount importance to me. So please know that that this is reaching people who might not know that. And so I just am really, really grateful, really, really grateful for you in that story.
It is interesting. Like I feel like I see pregnant women all the time. I have like a radar for it. And it's interesting to see their reactions when I invite them to church. And like, I remember one time a girl was like, she didn't show up, and I had invited her, and she's like, can you give me one more week? I need to stop smoking. And I was like, what do you mean you need to stop smoking? She's like, I just need to clean up my life a little bit more. Let me wait a week. And I'm like, just come as you are. And I get that so much. It's like, we have projected as the church that this is for perfect people. And so people think they have to be perfect in order to step through the walls of the church, which, I mean, we have failed as the church in that, because we're not being authentic and vulnerable about our own struggles and our own. And so that's why we're called hypocrites and stuff all the time, because we, when something terrible happens and you've projected yourself as perfect all this time. But even with our groups, we are very strategic in the first session is the leaders going around and telling their own stories.
Right.
And yes. It's always like, you can see when they walk in the door, they kind of have this guard up, like they're not really sure. I remember one time a girl was like, I thought you were going to tell me that I was a piece of crap and I was going to hell. I was like, you thought you were going to come, like, that is what they think the church is. And all the leaders just is like, here's my stuff. And so a girl's like, oh my gosh, like these ladies' stories that they've been through and gone through and they've done, that's way worse than my story. And if God did that for her, then maybe God will do that for me too. Right. And their walls start coming down. And then it's like, oh, okay, this is my people. Like, and look how they were in a messy situation at one point in their life or several points in their life. And they came through the other side. Maybe I can as well. And that's how we can attract people to the church. It's through our authenticity, our vulnerability, our transparency in explaining what experiences we are going through or what we've gone through, but then giving God the glory on the other side of it.
Turns out it's not our militant morality, you mean?
Right. No, that's not going to do it.
As I am listening to you, it's become more important to me at this stage of my life to, instead of really trying to get people in, trying to get people out, getting people out into the world, getting people seeing people that are not like them, that might not be, I don't know, living with their, exact moral codes or whatever. And I think that the church definitely has a PR problem because we're so hesitant to do that. But also I think that we can perpetuate a message that says there's going to be this place of arrival, that eventually we're going to have all the knowledge and sanctity that we need to just kind of be done with sin. And that's not true. Of course you can be in church once a week, even with a relationship with God, and still be sinful and still make a mistake. And I feel like while, Amy, we're not friends yet, I do feel like I know you well enough to point out that in your situation, you had a supportive family. You did not have an abusive boyfriend. And so there was a little bit of support there, even though you were afraid and certainly felt lonely. And what you experienced with the church was very real. There are also a lot of other situations that are happening that make this decision very, very, very complex. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, people who might not be in the trenches, do you mind telling us a little bit about who is having abortions and why? Can we examine that a little bit? Because there are probably things that people like us don't know about people who feel forced into this situation.
Well, for sure. It is, it's a lot of women that struggle financially. That's one of the top reasons why women have abortions. Interruption of like either their job or their college or high school. Education interruption is a big one as well. A lot of jobs don't give enough. They don't do paid maternity leaves at all. So, I mean, you don't, even if you can find childcare, you can't afford to miss a week of work, very practical things that make it so that, well, I mean, that's the saddest thing for someone to have an abortion because their boss doesn't give them enough time. Like as employers, we should be giving our people enough time to be able to have their baby. Also the father figure, whether it is that he is just not involved at all and he's done, or maybe he is involved. Like I know one mom that was in my group, and she found out she was in it. She always looked very young. She looked younger than what she was. And she was with a man that she found out later after she had gotten pregnant that he was a pedophile, a reported pedophile. And so she is like freaking out, like, do I have an abortion? And she had found out she was having a girl, which is what he is attracted to. And he has rights he would have rights to the baby, like even as a pedophile. So, and he had already served time and all that, and she just didn't know. So it was a very complicated decision. And thankfully it ended up working out because he actually ended up letting his rights go before, like right when the baby was born. And she ended up getting married to a pastor. It was Precious and this baby's dad. But I mean, they're just really, really complicated. And there's a higher abortion rate with your second, third, or fourth kid than your first. So many times it's like, oh, well, they need to see a picture of the baby to know, they need to be reminded there's a baby in there, which yes, like the sonogram machines at pregnancy centers, those are all very important. But if they already have a child, they know it's a baby. They've already given birth before. It is, for the most part, it is reasons that are complicated practically. Financial, car, and the father of the baby relationship are the top 3 reasons. So even as we're helping, it's like we're really trying to be Holy Spirit led on how we can help her, and what does that look like. And sometimes it's just having a voice of reason to say, actually, you can do this. It's not going to be easy. But there is a path, and you can do this, and we're going to be in it with you, and we're going to help you get there. And like just to someone to say that they believe in her. There was one mom once, and I tell this story quite often, but she only had a dad. Her mom left when she was 2 weeks old. And so she was just raised by her dad, and he never got remarried. And she found out she was pregnant, and he said, "You will be a horrible mom. You cannot have this baby." And the baby dad was like already in jail for something. And so he said, "You can have an abortion or you can place for adoption, but you're not parenting." And so she met with an adoptive family, but she just didn't really feel the connection. And then she went to the abortion clinic, but then people were praying outside. So she just kept driving. And so, but she really just didn't know what to do. And she was crying, and she worked at a UPS store, like a shipping store. And right before she walked in, she's like, "God, I don't even know if you're real. I don't even know if you can hear me, but I don't know where to go. I don't know who to turn to. I feel so lost in this decision. And if you could bring me someone to this UPS store today that has a package that has a label with the word church on it, then maybe there'll be someone I can ask a question to." So she goes in to work her shift, and here comes a guy that has the box, and it has a label on it, and that has the word church. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, do you work at a church?" And he said, "No, I have a company that makes websites for churches." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And he could see she was like disappointed. And he was like, "Well, I go to church." And she's like, "You do?" And then that was it. She just started crying and told him everything. "My dad thinks I'll be a horrible mom, and I'm so scared. Baby dad's in jail, and he's not even a great guy, and all this stuff. Well, and I know this guy, he's a dad of 4 boys, and he was just like, "I don't know what's happening right now. I'm just trying to ship my package." But he's like, "Okay, I think our church has something. Like, let me get your information. I'll have my wife call you. It's going to be okay." And he said some encouraging words to her. And then that's how she got connected to the Embrace Grace group that I was leading at my own church. And I remember when she was sitting next to me, we were already the 3rd session in, and she was telling all the other moms about this guy that she had met. This is how she heard about the group. And she said something I will never forget. She said, "My dad thinks I'll be a horrible mom, but that guy at the UPS store said he thought I would be a good mom." And she kind of just said it like it wasn't a big deal. And she's talking to the girls, and I'm thinking, what did she just say? Like the fact that a perfect stranger said the words, "I think you'll be a good mom." No one else in her life had said that to her. Like, you can do it. But one stranger said, I think you would be a great mom. And that was literally all she had to hold on to. That one person in the world believed that she could do it. And she ended up being an amazing mom. And now she's married and doing awesome. And like, there's people like this all everywhere where they just, sometimes it's just, they need someone to believe in them and say, you're not alone. And that would help prevent a lot of abortions, just knowing that there's support systems out there to help. And even the movement in general, like the pro-life movement, when we started Embrace Grace, we didn't think we're starting a pro-life organization. I had no context. Like if someone said I run a pro-life organization, I would have assumed that meant picketers. Like I didn't, because it's the only thing media shows. Like I don't know what that is. And we actually got invited after Embrace Grace had become a nonprofit, all that. We got invited to have a booth at a pregnancy center training conference. I didn't even really know what a pregnancy center was, which they are, like places where it's totally free. You can get a free sonogram and they don't refer for abortion. They just give you all the resources to help you choose life. And so they asked me to speak and we set up a booth and I'm walking around looking at all these booths and all the booths are like boots on the ground organizations that are helping women. And it's like grants for single moms. It's maternity homes for homeless moms. I mean, all these different cool organizations. And I'm walking around, hundreds of them. And I'm like, how have I gone to church my whole life? And no one ever told me that this existed. I've never heard of any of this stuff. And I almost had an abortion. Mm-hmm. Like if I had known that this stuff existed, I may have felt more empowered to choose life.
Right.
And how many other believers are out there that have no idea that there's so many cool organizations that are helping women and that we need to put a spotlight on so that they know in case they ever meet someone that's out there that needs support. We need to know what is offered in our community so we can point people to help.
Gosh, this is just such a thick answer because the next question that I was going to ask is, okay, so we know that banning abortions isn't going to end them, but if we know who's having them and why, well, then maybe we can address some real needs. And so I was going to ask, like, can we be specific? What are those needs? And then you tell this story about what if it's just paying holy attention to the people around us that are asking. I heard the word church. Well, I go to a church. I mean, he had margin in his life and in his day, and he wasn't staring at his phone like so quickly on to the next thing that he paid holy attention to the person in front of him and noticed that she seemed a little distressed. I mean, just like that is no small thing. I mean, that is
God's bringing us people all the time. And I think we get too busy, to notice that there's people that are praying and asking God. I hear so many times women say, I was going to have an abortion. And I told God, you better do something or intervene in some way because I don't see how I can physically actually have this baby and survive. So you better do something because it's scheduled and it's planned. And they always say, I was looking for I asked God, you better give me a sign. That's always the words. I hear this all the time. And the thing is this, we are the sign, me and you, everyone, if we're a believer, we are the sign. And are we allowing the Holy Spirit to speak through us and listening? I love that. What did you just say? You called it a holy interruption.
Holy attention. Pay holy attention. Margin. Yeah, having margin.
Yes. I asked God to give me kingdom goggles. Help me see the person in front of me that if I need to encourage, if I need to look in the eyes and, say something to her, because you just don't know if they're looking for a sign of whatever that might be, that maybe the Holy Spirit speaking through us is the sign that they needed to feel empowered in whatever that decision is.
Right. So if feeling alone is something that pushes people to think that this is a solution to a problem, if abuse, if financial concerns, lack of childcare, lack of healthcare, lack of transportation, lack. So if abortion isn't going to solve, abortion is not going to solve abuse. Abortion is not going to get you a car. It is quite obviously a Band-Aid to a problem. What is going to solve these problems? I know that, we keep talking about you and me, and maybe just as an example, but please give us more. Maybe it's not getting the last $5,000 out of your car. Maybe it is donating that car to somebody who desperately needs it? What are some other ideas? What are things that we can do?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the biggest thing is to look to see what you personally, whoever's listening, what do you have that you love? What passion and gift that is inside of you that you could help a single mom? I mean, it can even be the simplest thing. I remember one time someone told me that they had just had their baby and they lived in a second floor apartment totally alone. And they were like, how am I going to take out the trash? Because there wasn't a trash service. So do I hold the carrier and the trash? I don't know if I can do that. Do I leave the baby locked in the apartment by itself in the carrier while I go take out the trash? Like, how do I do it? And so she was totally stressed out about it. And she would put her trash outside her door to be taken out the next morning. And she said, every single time someone is taking my trash out to the dumpster. And she said, I don't know who it is. And she said, I just keep thinking it must be Jesus is doing it because I've been so stressed about this. It's those little things that make such a big difference. Yeah. But I've seen too, there was a little girl who was an Embrace Grace leader's daughter. She was 9 years old and they were babysitting an Embrace Grace baby. And this Embrace Grace mom was Ubering. She dropped off the baby and then Ubered to work. And the little 9-year-old was like, Mom, why does this mom not have a car? Why does she drive with this Uber? And she said, well, it's hard to be a single mom and she's trying to save her money and she's doing what she can and we're helping with the baby. And she said, well, can we buy her a car? And she's like, no, we can't afford to buy her a car. And she said, well, I could make cupcakes. Like, what if I made cupcakes and I sold them? And so she's like, well, if you want to, we can try. So this little 9-year-old started making cupcakes and saying, I want to buy a single mom a car. And when people would find out about it at the church, they're like, here's $500. I'll take a dozen cupcakes. They were just like throwing money at her. She's so cute. And this little 9-year-old bought this mom a Ford Explorer. And we have a video of it. She did it like in the church parking lot. And it was cool because people started coming forward and say, I want to cover her insurance for 2 years. I have a car. I own a car mechanic place and I'm going to give her free oil changes. Here's gas cards for the next 3 years. Like it was just people all started chipping in whatever way that they could to help her feel empowered with this car. And to see like the 9-year-old hand the keys over to this mom, like the faith that this 9-year-old has, like what can we do as well? Like if she can do it, we can too. Of just the faith and like what do we have inside of us? And it's. I wish there was a cookie cutter way to say this is how a woman feels empowered in her life decision, and there's not. As you said, it is extremely complicated, the nuances that are going on in each of these girls' lives, but you don't understand and know until you have a relationship with her. And as you develop a relationship with her, that's when things start to come out of like, oh, this mom really needs a job that's way closer to her house. Like, let me help her try with that, whatever it might be. We can help her, but it doesn't just happen from afar. It happens because we need to be in the trenches with them. And it's messy and it's not tied up in a pretty little bow, like you would hope, I guess. I've heard some moms say, well, I just thought we'd get like 3 or 4 moms in our Embrace Grace group that are 16 and they just, they were a virgin and they got pregnant on their first time. And this one's got 5 kids. And they're like, this isn't what we thought. I'm like, yeah. I mean, you may have sometimes a semester where it is like what you thought it would be, but most of the time it's messy and they're walking through really hard stuff. But you're going to see miracles. You're going to have front row seats to them because they're turning to their Heavenly Father. They're asking for miracles and God wants to show who he is to them and his glory. And we get to, as leaders, watch it happen. And it is beautiful miracles. And we are not the genie in a bottle that's going to fix everything. We have to, there's times when girls have asked me for money and I say, yes, here you go. And there's times when I hear the Lord say, no, I want to show her in a different way. And he always does. He always does. And because I don't want to be their source, I want God to be their source. And so how do I point them to him so that when they're done with Embrace Grace, they're not like blowing up my phone. It's more of like, I feel empowered and they're going to a church where they have a support system and a church family and a spiritual family to rely on, all of us collectively helping her in it is what's that's what I believe actually is the answer. It is the church. There are over 300,000 churches in America. If we all were doing something, we could make abortion unthinkable. And I've seen it happen so many times. The churches that are all in, that are having single parent ministry, they are helping with college grants. They're helping moms with their car repairs. I mean, that is they're thriving, and these moms feel totally supported. And people want to give. They want to help.
Yeah.
They just need to have the avenue to know how to do that.
Yeah, we're designed for it. It's like, it's biological. I mean, we are designed to help one another. And I was just thinking of the benefits, because it isn't going to be, I think we can romanticize things. That's our nature too, probably. But it is going to be messy, and it is going to be hard. But ultimately, the Lord is pleased, and people on the outside looking in might have a little bit of curiosity. I am intrigued about how well these people love. What's going on over there? And so we will be known by our love. That is what is going, how well we love one another. And when we think about the early church, they weren't big enough to, go change any laws. Jesus wasn't going after Caesar to go change laws. He was trying to create a culture of love so that people looking outside might be intrigued. One of the things I want to talk about, one more thing, and then I'd like to end with what you're hopeful for. But you mentioned that here you are, a church girl, and so unaware of all of the many things that were either on the cusp of happening or already happening. I don't know, but of ministries that were designed for support. And I think that it's possible that for a long time, there was a lack of compassion around the movement. When it came to mind for you, what came to mind was picketing, or angry people walking back and forth, pacing. Yeah. And so when there's a lack of compassion, there are probably misconceptions about who's going to have them and why. Do you feel like that is changing? That there is not only is when you have this binary way of thinking, that it's I'm either pro-life and I'm picketing with Bible verses, or I'm pro-choice and I'm saying, it's my body, my choice. I can do whatever I want. And the truth is that most people are a mixed bag of those things. There is, and what media does is, I think, is polarize us. It pushes us to extremes, and we're really a more nuanced version, a mixed bag of these things. And so that perceived lack of compassion, I don't even know that that's true in real life. I just think that that's how it's portrayed. Is there more work to be done in this compassion compartment, or is this just something that's exaggerated by media?
Well, there's always more work to be done, for sure. And we still have, every once in a while, we'll still have churches that will want to make a girl stand up in front of the congregation and confess her sin. And, I don't know, it doesn't lead to anything good. It leads to abortion, actually. But it is kind of like how we started this conversation. It is a lot of pigeonholing when there's so much gray in both of the complex issues. Like, we have a donor that is pro-choice, and she gives to us. She said she's had an abortion herself, and it was one of the most traumatic experiences of her life. But she still thinks women should have the right to choose. And so she donates to us because she said, if I had something like Embrace Grace, I may not have gone through what I went through and made the decision that I had made. And so she wants to sow into it. And so, it's on both sides, on the pro-life side and the pro-choice side. It's like, well, I can see how we can be come together on, let's just love people. I mean, you can't argue with loving people. That's all we're doing. And if a woman does have an abortion, we don't want her to, but if she does, the church should be a safe place for her to go to for healing, for help. Churches should have abortion healing groups at every church. They should have those, because there are women, 1 in 4 have experienced an abortion, and the abortion rate is the same inside the church as it is outside. So that is women in your congregation that have experienced an abortion, and they want healing, but they don't feel comfortable even bringing it up to say that I need to talk about this, and I need healing. And the church should be the first place that she should be able to find that healing through God, and feel safe and talking about her abortion experience.
Right.
And then we encourage them after they go through healing, like go lead an Embrace Grace group, because you can be the person you wish you had years ago when you made that decision. You can be that for someone else. Like you can be what you needed. And the scripture says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony in Revelation. And so sharing our story is healing. It brings healing, and that is how we overcome. And so if anyone's listening and you've experienced an abortion, I just want you to know that God wants to heal you. He loves you so much. You are not disqualified from serving or getting involved. You are qualified, and your story will help save lives. And so get involved. There is power in the fact to say, hey, I went through this and I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. And this is what I learned from it. There's power in that. And so you are loved and you can change the world, but go look at pregnancy centers in your area or churches. Look up Support After Abortion is a really great organization. And it's almost like you could put in your zip code or reach out to them, tell them where you live, and they'll get you connected to all kinds of different, if you want to watch something online, or if you want to be in a group, or if you want to go on a retreat, or whatever you feel comfortable with, alone or with a group. They have so many different options all around the nation to get you, and whether you're Catholic or you're Protestant or you're an atheist, whatever you might be, there is healing out there for you, and they can help get you connected to healing.
Amy, you could not be a more beautiful portrait of how healed people heal people. And I am so, so grateful. We hear all the time that hurt people, but healed people healed people. And thank you so much for always pointing to the truth. You have a fiery conviction and a heart the big of Texas. And I'm grateful to be in same circles with you. Before you tell us where to follow and how to support you, do you mind closing with something that you're hopeful for?
Oh, yes. I just hope that everyone that's listening, that you feel empowered to get involved. And it could be in a big way, it could be in a small way, but you never know how one word or one conversation could actually help save a life. And so ask the Lord to show you if you are a believer. There's also my book, Help Her Be Brave, Discover Your Place in the Pro-Life Movement. And there's over 300 ideas of how to get involved in the movement. It kind of shines a light on what the movement looks like, all the cool places that actually empower women. If you're not really sure, but just know that you do. It's not for pastors. It's not for, the people. I don't teach. I don't do, like, everyone has a place. And so ask the Lord to show you what that looks like.
Where do we follow you, and how can we give you dollars?
Yeah, go to embracegrace.com. It has all the information about starting a group or joining a group or donating. And also our Instagram and Facebook is Embrace Grace Inc. It's cool to see just all the pictures and testimonies of all the creative ways that churches are loving on these pregnant moms. Awesome.
You are so, you fight so consistently, Amy, and you are broadly pro-life and pro-love. It's an honor to give you a space to tell your story. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you come back.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Hello, Beefinator. How's it going?
Hi, baby beef. Great. You?
Fantastic. Happy to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. We've kind of started to meet that, the quota. It's like there's a certain amount of time, and then it's like, oh, it's time.
Yeah. Or then it gets, the agenda of all the things that we have to cover and the time that we haven't talked starts getting too long, and it gets overwhelming. Too long. So we have to hurry up and get in there.
That's right. So I know Amy Ford because we've shared some space together, but I had never had a real, long, in-depth conversation with her. And it was probably one of the easiest interviews I've done with someone that I didn't know. That was really, really great and easy. And I knew that it would be that way. I walked into it excited because just the people that Destiny draws is always, a sure thing. Like it's just, she surrounds herself with really strong, tender women. And the combination of strong and tender is just the very best for me. The very best combo.
Y'all are very, very, very similar. I was very, just like you said, fun and easy. And I felt like I was just like sitting the third person in the room with y'all.
Really, I love when that happens.
Yeah.
It's not very often that I will get lost in a guest's story because I'm always, I don't know, podcast host confessions. Maybe this isn't true for everyone, but it's definitely true for me. I am never 100% present because I'm thinking of the things that need to come next and how we're going to wrap that up. And was that a tangent? And anyways, so I'm directing in my mind just a little tiny bit. And this was one of those times that I was not at all. Like I was just 100%. And so and I don't even know that I don't feel 100% present when I'm not.
Right.
But I will go back and listen and be like, oh, I didn't hear the full meaning of that. So anyways, but this is not this interview. When I re-listen to it, I'm going to be like, nope, I heard that. I checked that. I wrote down that because I was just so in it with her. Yeah. I was reminded of the last pro-life episode that I did with Destiny.
Gosh,
and it was
so good.
I know it was right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I was expecting this fiery, impassioned guest that was going to be full of marching orders and, directives. And what showed up was this heartsick hero. And
I can remember where I was driving, listening to that episode. It was like, and I talk about not being present. I probably shouldn't have been driving because I was so enthralled and just so struck at the angle from which y'all spoke, and just the level of emotion and just raw conversation that it was so impactful for me.
And that's what Destiny does, and what she has since done, like for me selfishly, is she has introduced me to other people that appreciate the complexity and nuance also. Because I always saw my experience with the pro-life movement was not a Destiny-like experience that acknowledged the complication of it all.
Well, that's why it's so important. That's no one's experience, right? Like this is why this is such an important topic for you to keep talking about and bringing to people, because I think it's so different and so compelling.
Right. And I think that and so anyways, being here this year with Amy felt a little full circle because there was a lot of joy and a lot of hope and a lot of action. There were these things that she's doing so well. And I'm sure she's been doing them well for a long time. I'm just saying for me as someone that's keeps trying to bring this up in a way that I like, in a way that I feel represents me well. This was a great episode to really follow that one. And if I were going to put the work or the guests that I have had on about this topic, if I were to put them in order, I love where we've landed here with Amy. And I think one of the most important points that she made where, when I asked her like, hey, give us some marching orders. And I thought that she was, I don't know, going to have like a to-do list, like that was maybe even a little bullet pointed. And she was like, walk around looking for people, like open your heart to people. And I wanted to ask you, Beef, because you have done that so incredibly well through your foster journey. We are an adoptive family. My family is an adoptive family. And that has nuance and that has complexity. And there are absolutely adoption ethics that we have had to contend with, that we have had to sit with and make peace with. And our story is so unique, or every story is unique, but it is very unique to us and how we got to, and watching you, I don't know that you would put it this plainly. Actually, I'm going to put it, I'm going to oversimplify it and you can flesh it out. But like being inspired by that, our adoptive journey, and it starting your something. You didn't even know what,
Yes,
except that like, I know that something's happening here and I don't know what. And so watching your foster journey has been inspiring for me because I feel like God wanted us to adopt and we did. And watching you foster is like, if I could write it, that's how it would look, because the intent is keeping families together.
Yeah.
It's helping people parent. It's getting people through crisis.
Yes.
And you have operated as a scaffold, as a support system, as a safety net to so many different women. If you could give us some advice, I feel like I know what you're going to say, like around friendship, but if you could like give us some advice or even just like, or how it looks. I don't know that there was a lot of time. Amy's life is full of this, but I don't know that there was a lot of time for her to get real specific about markers that we will know we are in relationship with this person. This isn't just a service project.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I definitely can remember at the beginning of our foster journey, right? It's about the first thing that I had capacity for was this child, right? And this child coming into our life and trying to figure out how to parent a third and how to figure out this relationship. And I can remember you being the first person to talk to me in depth about these kiddos' families outside of our home and starting that relationship. And so thank you for that.
Because I was inspired by someone else, which, you know, I mean.
That's good. So, you know, yeah, you said it, like with friendship, it's about relationship and it's about individuals. And it's about stillness and sitting and knowing rather than fixing and checking a box. I guess those are all the things that come to my mind. And so we currently have our 6th foster child living with us, and all 6 of them have been completely different stories, completely different families, completely different outcomes in every single way. So there's no general statement to be made, right? That's my experience. I hope and expect that would be every foster parents, because it should be nuanced and unique every single person that you come in touch with. But for us, like some of the things, the way that walking with someone looks is, you know, we got really, really good advice and counseling and support at the beginning on how to do life with another mom. Like, because I was my mom, right? I am a mom when I'm momming, when I'm foster momming, but there's a biological mom. And so how to respect that and encourage that and foster that, ironically. And so it started off with like one of our kids, the first thing that comes to mind is writing letters to the mom, because I had a baby, right? I had her infant. So her baby was born and came to my house while she had to go back to finish out a jail sentence. And so, and we didn't know how long that baby would be with us and how that sentence would end. We didn't even know how long the sentence was. And so it was just starting a relationship of telling her about the things that her daughter was doing and the way that her daughter was reacting to life. And so I didn't even know, but what God did with that is that she had trust in me and saw the way that I loved her daughter and saw the way that I brought her into that rather than keeping her from that. And that started something that has gotten really, really deep and beautiful. That foster daughter has been reconciled with her birth mom, and it has not been seamless. It has had bumps because for a whole lot of reasons, including that mom just didn't have examples and didn't have models and didn't get to learn how to do a lot of parenting and then also just grown up life. And so we get to be a resource for her. And that can be on, sometimes it's been, helping to pay for something when ends didn't meet, but more times than not, it's giving advice on things that are just so simple. Like, what kind of allergy medicine do you think would be good for me to give my toddler? And would you go to the pediatrician if there were just these symptoms, or would you wait for it to get worse? Or do you think that, the kiddo is too big for a nap right now? Or how if she's fighting nap, like what should, just the things that moms talk about, right? And that she chooses me as a resource for that. And then I need to be careful about not being an expert on that child, right? I'm walking with you and helping you parent your child, but here's my experience with kids, not necessarily just your kid. So those are the kinds of things that I think about, is just the simple, being a friend, being somebody that she knows is for her, and can support in the big and the little. And then like another woman that's in my life that I love, and she's raising 2 children right now on her own. And they're both little. They're like 18 months and 4 months, right? So if you've been around kids or have your own kids, you know that is like in the thick of it. And sometimes, most recently she sent me a picture of her freezer, and it was full of breast milk. And she was so proud. And I was like cheering for her. Like she just literally, there was no words. The text was like a picture of breast milk bags. And I was like, no way, you've got that much of a supply. That's awesome. And just, that was it. That was my job, is just to celebrate that she's doing it and doing something hard. And so it's in some ways it's the easy things, right? Because there's no special skills in those things, but it's also, it takes more connection. It takes more intentionality to keep up those relationships, right? So that you are still somebody that is seen as safe and trustworthy and supportive. And so that when the little questions come, they know that you're there. And then when the big questions come, right? Because we've had, biological moms of former foster kiddos that have gotten into big struggles, and praise God, hallelujah, called us to say like, I'm not well. And I'm like, okay, here we are. And the way I'm going to take care of you right now is to keep your kiddo safe while you're getting healthy. And then when you're healthy, let's keep going. Let's do the next chapter of life together. So that was a lot.
And you've done the same thing for me, and I've done the same thing for you time and time again. That's what friendship is. That's what friendship is. And going to the banquet, yes, please do that. Writing the check, yes, please do that. Yes. Cast your vote. Okay, fine. There is a systemic problem that is ultimately a lack of support. Mm-hmm. And if we would offer support, it would be nice if it were, with transportation and housing and just family. There are so many things that the government is not doing, but we, the church, we as individuals can. And then that's when ending a life becomes unthinkable. Mm-hmm. That's when it becomes unthinkable. Why would I do that? Why would I do that when I have Kristen? Why would I do that when I know I have somewhere to go? I have someone that will listen. I have someone that will cry with me. I have someone that will go, oh crap, what are we going to do? Well, I don't know, but we're going to do it. Right. I don't know, but we're going to get through it and we're going to do this. So offering that support, I don't know that those one-time things ever really save anyone, ever really heal anyone, but incorporating them sure does.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you for your hard work. You have a lot of wonderful things to say about Methodist Children's Home. Maybe we can put that in some show notes too. I know that they've been really crucial for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Beef. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, friends, that's it for season 11. I hope that you enjoyed all of our guests. A special thank you to them for sharing their knowledge and their wisdom and their hearts and their minds. I love this space where we can learn and grow together. Please stay tuned on Allison M. Sully on Instagram and Sullivan Family TikTok. And you can catch me on Forte Catholic with Taylor Schroll about 25% of the time. A big thank you to Taylor Schroll for all of his help behind the scenes, editing and doing his sound magic. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss season 12 when it comes out. Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.
Today's show was a production of Allison Sullivan in conjunction with the Forte Catholic Podcast Network. For more great Catholic podcasts, head on over to fortecatholic.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.